Thanks for coming. I'm really happy to be part of this event, and of course as well intimidated by Ulay sitting in the first row. Actually, when we started to discuss with Sophia regarding to the presentation at the show, with Ulay we were very happy that kind of Sophia pointed out Ulay's social experiments that he started to work on in the 90s, especially because it's a very actual theme in the current social and political situation that surrounds us. But on the other hand, these projects are a lot of times very much off the radar when we are talking about the practice of Ulay. So since the presentation is fairly short, I decided to point out the projects from 70s till now that can refer to idea of this social experiment, but on the other hand also tries to contextualize the projects, Fortress Europe, there is a criminal touch to art, and women with flags that are presented here in the show. So first I wanted to entitle my lecture with agency and the other in relation to Ulay's work, but then when we were driving to Dundee, I asked Ulay how he feels and how is his immune system, and he said, after he answered, he said, you know, it's difficult for an artist to be immune, so I thought it's maybe the best title for this topic. Actually I would start as many other theoreticians and curators regarding Ulay's work, and Ulay was born in a bomb shelter in '43, and many of them they relate this experience of post-war Germany to development of his anti-aesthetics. But on my it's actually a phenomenon that's called Trümmerfrauen, and it's actually women that were helping to clean the cities after the Second World War. And in my opinion, it's actually Ulay's first experience with the community itself, with the community that contributes, because it was self-organized, and also there are stories how Ulay was as a kid playing on the ruins, and his mother was contributing to community. So in my opinion, this kind of led this idea of Ulay's social experiment, especially in relation to the other, but of course also to the notion of the community itself. So I'm skipping many years, and I'm in '68 when Ulay decides to leave Germany. And one of the reasons was that he found an article in German newspaper about the Provo movement in Amsterdam. He calls them constructive anarchists, and they were actually a community that tried to contribute to the welfare of the society, also in terms of environmental issues. And this is the project that's called Metamorphosis of the Canal House from '72. Where actually Ulay took a photo of petrochemical refinery from in the outskirts of Amsterdam, and he blew up the image 10 by 10 meters and hanged it on a canal house in Amsterdam. It was actually directly he was addressing, of course, the environmental issue that was also one of the main topics of the Provost, but on the other hand, he was of course referring to the community and how to improve life in the community. And it's actually the first time that he also used media as mechanism to deliver the message. So actually he did this in the center of Amsterdam. The next point in this timeline, I would point out the Polaroid series that were already very thoroughly discussed already today. But I would maybe just add another thing that aside of this ongoing re-questioning of Ulay's identity, we need to point out that this re-questioning was often happening in relation to marginal groups that Ulay was meeting in Amsterdam. So there was like homeless people, transvestites, transsexuals. So this, of course, led him to, on one hand, showing, of course, a certain vulnerability to particular groups of society, but on the other hand, of course, he was possible in identifying with the fragility of these groups, which is, I think, one of the key elements when we are talking about the social experiments of the 90s. The next project I would just mention, there is a criminal touch to art, which was really very, very well analyzed by Dominic. I would just maybe point out the last gesture when Ulay hangs the painting in an apartment of Turkish immigrants. And it's, of course, again, a direct reference to social and political situation in the 70s. We have to know that actually the situation of gastarbeiters, mostly Turkish community that was ghettoized in the 70s in Kreuzberg, contributed to the building of this new German state that Ulay was, of course, re-questioning through their most powerful symbol, Karl Spitzweg. The next one I would point out is Aboriginal Australia. Actually, Ulay got a grant from Australian Cultural Institute in the end of 70s, beginning of the 80s, and aside of having to contribute to the art scene, to perform, to develop project, he was obliged also to contribute to the society. So actually he met people who were engaged in land rights for Aboriginal people, people like Philip Toyne and Daniel Vachon. And through them he also met the elders, and one of key figures also, let's say, in Ulay's life is Watuma Chungurai, who also helped him later with Ulay's engagement with drawing sacred sites of Aborigines. Actually, the only documents that existed in this time were maps that the British did in the 50s because of the nuclear experiments. And then actually Ulay gathered all these maps and traveled with the elders around Australia and actually pointing out the sacred sites, and all these maps were later contributed to the court, to the case for gaining the rights. And of course, it's he was marking things that white male is usually overlooking. It might be just a rock or a tree, but Ulay was carefully marking this in these maps that were actually contributed later for the fight for the land rights. The next project, it's actually, we are in the 90s, and it's actually, the project Can Be the Feeling Long Praying Record. It's kind of, let's say, theoretically marked as one of the, as a first, let's say, the social participatory project and social experiment that was developed by Ulay, and it was actually inspired by Jean Genet's play The Blacks, a clown show, surrealistic postmodern show. And Long Playing Record project represented Ulay's statement about the concept of conflict, his own inner conflict, and as well the conflict of the others. And here it was represented through American society and interracial approaches. So for this presentation, actually, Ulay presented large Polaroids that were actually also reinforcing the tautological meanings and aspects of the whole presentation. For instance, the white gun literally was representing a white gun, but of course referring to the power of the white people. And on the other hand, actually Ulay did a project together with the 36 Afro-American homeless, which he later, after he took Polaroid portraits of them, invited them in a gallery, intentionally with the notion that he wanted to create a discomfort among the visitors, because usually these people, I remember once when we spoke with Ulay, when you are on the street you throw a coin and you forget about this person, but when you interact with them it's completely different. It's actually not so much just about the portrait, but it's also about the whole process, how this project was developed. Ulay was visiting them for some weeks to gain their trust, and after they took him as his own, they then later went to realize these Polaroid portraits. And nevertheless, actually it was also a struggle of the system, of the gallery, that Ulay had to fight to bring these people there. Another project that I would like to point out is Berlin After Images. It's actually a project that has a series of architecture and a series of flags. This project was mainly analyzed in the sense of also, let's say, formal approaches to photography, because Ulay was here pointing out so-called retinal negative after image. So it's actually a technique that Ulay actually used for this project, but on the other hand, the content itself was referring, of course, to the beginnings of the European Union, that already in the 90s Ulay felt that it's a project that cannot succeed, and of course questioning the role of Europe as a fortress. So on the other hand, with the symbolical decaying of these imperialist buildings from the 19th century, on the other hand, with the new member states that are building a fortress Europe. So I would just like to focus maybe to the projects that started to evolve in 2000. This is the project that Ulay developed in Vincent van Gogh Institute in Venray with mentally disabled people. It was actually a project that was happening actually for 3 months, where Ulay actually mostly functioned as a mentor. He vanished from the camera, and through discourse and workshops tried to develop portraits and also in the end self-portraits of people, and on the other hand organize the exhibition. The last, but of course not the least project, is Earth Water Catalog. As a short introduction, in early 2000s, Ulay started to get involved in the question of rights on drinking water. Actually, the question how water somewhere is politicized, how it relates to, of course, economical mechanisms and the economical powers that wane through our society. So in 2002 he started a project, Water to All, evolved it in a project Water for Me, and then it seems that everything culminated in a project Earth Water Catalog that Ulay initiated in 2012. And it's actually a project in which, in my belief, all the engagement that he was doing already for 40 years is actually happening. Ulay completely vanishes from the image in this point, and he's actually using art as a mechanism to distribute the questions and informations regarding the drinking water. As I already said, the question now is heavily politicized, but of course Ulay, as it is not the first time that he, in a, let's say, prophetic way, tackled some issues that go through our society. So one of possible distribution models of the Earth Water Catalog is, of course, form of exhibition. The Earth Water Catalog idea is to accumulate information about topics that relate to issues of water, and of course they breach the let's say hermetical part of contemporary art. So everyone that's invited are either also like writers, philosophers, researchers, scientists. And of course, exhibition is just one of the modes that can apply to the distribution of the project, and of course, distribution of the information on the particular topic. And here you can see a collaboration with a Hungarian-French duet, Société Réaliste, and Ulay, where they produced a sign with a meaningful question, whose water is it? And yeah, here I would maybe stop the presentation in the sense that it's maybe the project that it's not so much on the radar, but on the other hand, it has a big potential for the development, and I think one of, let's say, main engagements of Ulay now. So, thank you.